Ironmaster's Quick-Lock adjustable dumbbells are one of the most popular adjustable dumbbells out there, so it's about time you reviewed them and made a few comparisons. If you're looking for a compact, durable dumbbell system with a weight capacity that can be expanded to an absurd level, these are and have been one of the best options on the market for many, many years. You could probably argue Quick-Locks are to Ironmaster what Arm Day and Booties are to Gluck's Gym. It's what we're built on. If you've been looking to build your own home gym, chances are you've come across these. It's a time-tested design. These feel like real dumbbells, and we're all familiar with them not only because of their history and popularity, but because many companies have taken their own attempts at doing something like this. Badass Dumbbell, Pepin, Kensu, and the list goes on. But where Ironmaster has an advantage is that they've been around since the 70s. They've got a lifetime warranty that anyone who wants to be taken seriously has to copy, and they just plain work day in and day out. It's an all-metal design, no levers or gears and moving parts. So let's get into what you're getting with these, their ecosystem, and ways to expand them. How they've held up to my abuse, because I do tend to go a little dramatically overboard in my reviews, but I'd rather talk someone out of a product than they buy something they later regret. If you do decide to purchase the Quick-Locks or any of the dumbbells we compare today, I've put affiliate links to them in the description, and if you use our link to buy them, we'll get a small commission at no cost to you that helps us keep this channel going and helps me recoup some of the cost from buying these. But if you're just here for some edutainment, you cheap bastard, then give us a like and subscribe so I don't feel so dirty. When these arrive, they're very well packaged. The plates are encased in styrofoam with each plate individually bagged and a divider between them, so they're not going to get beat up in shipping. The handles are double boxed, separated in their own bags, and have cardboard around them, which doesn't sound like much because it really isn't. But I wish other companies would take note. Yes, I know they're gonna get banged up when I use them, but I prefer to do the banging around here. And when I buy something new, I want it to arrive looking like it, and Ironmaster has done a good job ensuring they will. If you're not familiar with Ironmaster's Quick-Locks, they're basically adjustable dumbbell handles, except for those of you who don't own 24 5 and 10 pound plates, because well, that would be a little weird. Of course, they have a few advantages over loadable dumbbells. For example, they're more compact and easier to load since these rounded square plates tend to stand up on their own and won't roll away from you or, I don't know, into your baby's pack and play. They lock the plates on more securely because Ironmaster's locking screws work much better than a collar, but they do have one distinct disadvantage, and that's that you won't mangle your thigh with these because the lock creates a smooth surface for the dumbbell to comfortably sit when you need to prop them up on your legs, which means you can't use them as an excuse to get out of leg day, thus getting stuck in an unfortunate perpetual chest and arm day pump. If you've never used these before, they work off a pretty simple concept. Depending which size variation you buy, you'll have a series of 5 and 2.5 pound plates. Technically, there's a few other plate sizes and little tricks Ironmaster's come up with to make these more versatile, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. Let's just keep it simple for now. So you add however many plates you want. Let's say I want 25 pounds. The handle is 5 pounds, which is nice because some systems like Snode's 8080s start at 10 pounds. The locking screws are 2.5 pounds each, bringing us to 10 pounds. Then I just take pairs of 5s and 2.5s. If you look at the handle, you'll see this recessed portion. So I make sure my plates face the same way and they have that same recessed portion. They kind of lock together. And then you're gonna stack them up. Like I said, they tend to stand on their own. Then you get your handles, or your locking screws, which have this little notch on top. That's your alignment notch. Has the same thing for the screws. You insert them. You should have a little more space to do this. It's a little easier, not as crowded. And then even though you're alone in your home gym and nobody can hear you, you whisper to yourself, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, while you tighten it. You want more or less weight, you just repeat the process. It's honestly pretty straightforward and quick when you're not on camera doing it, and you're left with plates that are really locked on here since you're physically tightening them. So there's no movement, no play in the plates like there can be on a Nuobell or Snode type system. But even though these are some of the most durable adjustables out there, if you beat on them, they can still loosen over time. But they do say you can drop them. And if someone says that, you know I've gone over the top testing it. Probably why I've had more than a few companies balk at me reviewing their adjustable dumbbells. But I think it's important to have an adjustable dumbbell that's droppable. I'm not saying you need to make a drop montage to show everyone how cool you are, but I've had times where I feel a tweak in my shoulder or my setup isn't great, so I'm off balance, and dumping the dumbbells is a much better option than finding out what happens if I don't. But there's no perfect adjustable dumbbell. They all have their pros and cons that you'll have to weigh. Snodes and Nuobells adjust much quicker, which is great for drop sets, but they have to be on their cradles to do so, which is a bit of a pain. Powerblocks you can drop set from anywhere, there's no cradle, but when you're done, you do have to kind of re-rack the weights, lining everything back up, which gets trickier the heavier you go. The same can be said for this style of system. Aligning these at 10 pounds is easy. At 70 pounds, not as much. And like I said, the 80/80s only go in 10-pound increments, but they do have those magnetic adder weights you can add, whereas the Ironmasters can be adjusted in 5, or you could pick up their micro plates if you'd like to adjust in smaller increments. You can technically load these in 2.5-pound increments without those, but they wouldn't be balanced as you're putting a plate on one side and not the other. So you'd have to play with your hand positioning. But the fact that you can load the Quick-Locks unevenly can be an advantage for certain exercises. And I feel like I'm insulting your intelligence here for even saying this, but it's a well-known fact that the bicep curl is the only exercise that matters. Every other movement is simply an accessory for the curl. You only deadlift so you can keep your back straight during curls, and you only squat so your legs don't get tired holding up your massive arms all day. So the fact that you can load one side more than the other for supinated curls or whatever accessory lift you're doing that's not a curl, that's an advantage for the Ironmasters. Of course, they have their own pros and cons. I've mentioned they're not as quick as other systems. I'm not a fan of having an extra set of plates to keep track of. Well, I should say I'm really good at leaving the plates on the floor, and my wife is really good at tripping on things. They do sell 2 stands to help with organization. The original version, which is a stationary table with a shelf for plate storage, and a Pro Series, which is pretty much a rolling cart with built-in shelves to hold the various length locking screws and a shelf for the plates. But I just store these under my fixed dumbbells, and yes, I do see the irony in that. Speaking of fixed dumbbells, they have their own set of advantages, but unless you want to spend just under $4 grand, which is what my full set that goes up to 100 pounds cost me, adjustables are a much cheaper alternative that save you a ton of space. The Quick-Lock 5 to 75 pound set costs $700 shipped, and it can replace 3/4 of my rack of dumbbells. Of course, they've got a 45 pound set as well, but Ironmaster's system can be expanded out to 120 pounds by adding their 22.5 pound plates, or even 165 pounds. Not enough for you? Throw in the heavy handle kit to get up to 180 pounds per handle. The heavy handle kit is actually a set of plates that you screw onto the inside of these, adding 15 pounds to each so that your dumbbells start at 20 pounds. They can also help balance them, which can be an issue for people with smaller hands. What I mean by that is, since these have a 6 3/4 inch grip length versus the typical 5.5 or so of a fixed dumbbell, as the weight gets heavier, some people may have to take a second to make sure they're positioning their hand correctly on that grip and not too far one way or another. Now, even though these grips are longer than most, And I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere. I take this over something like Flybird's system that always remains the same length regardless of the weight on them, and like Snodes or Nuobells often end up being larger than a fixed dumbbell of the same size. These are kind of a mixture of Bowflex's 552s and the Nuobells. They look, feel, and perform like the Bowflexes, but they've got the same quick style handle adjustment system of Nuobell. They're actually not bad for the money, but they only go up to 25 pounds unless you want 11-pound increments, but there's better options at that weight. And like the 552s, these have a lot of plastic in them, but this does make for a good time to talk about the size of the Quick-Locks, because that's one of the things that makes them feel like more of an actual dumbbell. If you compare them to a 50 or 75-pound dumbbells, the Ironmasters are a little more compact, but it's pretty close. At a smaller weight like 25 pounds, you can see the difference better, but because this design locks the plates together, they feel similar during use versus some adjustable dumbbells where there's a little play, a little jiggle between the plates and the handles. And since we're on the topic of the handle, I prefer the knurling of the Quick-Locks over my rep dumbbells, where the knurl can be different depending on which pair I'm using, so it's a little inconsistent. And I like this straight style handle over a contoured style like Rogue's, where you're getting patches of knurling, which really just seems like a cost-saving measure. Ironmaster's knurl is clean, sticky without being sharp, and feels great on a dumbbell, even though their handle diameter is just a little bit smaller at 32 millimeters or 1¼ inches versus 34 millimeters on rep and 35 on Rogue. Now, this isn't an in-depth comparison between all the adjustable dumbbell options, so I won't cover every little detail between Powerblock, Snode, Nuobell. Heck, even Rep is coming out with a few options that we'll be reviewing, so subscribe so you don't miss those videos. But if you want a huge comparison, I know a guy who's really good at spending money who can put that together for you, so comment letting me know if that's something you want to see. But regardless of which dumbbell you buy, I haven't seen anyone put together an ecosystem quite like Ironmaster. They've got an adjustable kettlebell, Quick-Lock mace, easy curl bar, weight vest, and even a dumbbell to barbell adapter that all work within the same 1-inch standard size plate system. They even sell extra sets of handles, and I haven't even mentioned all of the Quick-Lock accessories and items Ironmaster makes. Whether that stuff holds value to you, I can't say, but I do think these compete well. Sure, there's no plate math on other options, so if your wife is bad at mental math like mine is, well, that can be a bit of an issue with the Quick-Locks, but it also means she'll have trouble adding up how much money you spent on your gym. Speaking of money, I'm not sure there's enough of a difference between Snodes at $795, Nuobell at $750, and Ironmaster at $700 for price to be a huge factor, especially as they're all imported, though the Quick-Locks are made in Taiwan. Even Powerblocks are pretty comparable, though there is some variety there, not only in where they're made, since some are made in the US and some in China, but because there's just so many different versions of Powerblocks. Now, sure, the Nuobell Snode style is the fastest to adjust, but you've got to deal with the cradle. And even with the 8080s using less plastic than Nuobell, they're nowhere near as durable as the Quick-Locks are. With Powerblocks, you can change weights fairly quickly, easily perform drop sets without a cradle, and they're very durable, even if not quite to the level of the Ironmasters. But that's another popular and time-tested design, though you'll have to see if you mind dealing with their blocky shape, the cage, and what I call re-racking the weights. Most people have kind of a love or hate relationship with them. With the Quick-Locks, the black powder coat on some of these plates will wear, as could the chrome on the handles, but that's all cosmetic, and you'd really have to try to break them. But listen, any well-done adjustable dumbbell will save you space and money, so you just click those links in the description and help feed my addiction while I help feed yours. Thanks to our patrons, links down below, like, comment, and subscribe to feed that algorithm. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.